But it's not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, I swear. It's because all these crazy stories keep coming out about how the U.S. has handled the virus over the years. Like, for instance, how the U.S. actually has a patent on Ebola. They really do. Now, it could be that the government spent years going through an arduous patent process so it could work on a vaccine just for the benefit of humanity. But now there's been a spate of stories about how the U.S. actually already has vaccines that it's just been sitting on, and I just can't help but wonder why. In an article titled How the U.S. Screwed Up in the Fight Against Ebola, Bloomberg Businessweek, not exactly a conspiracy theory news site, said that the Pentagon has sat on an effective Ebola treatment for 4 years as it's been stuck in bureaucratic limbo. The article outlines clearly how the government has a vaccine that has shown to be incredibly effective, but has been letting it rot on a shelf because of a huge bureaucratic mess that no one wants to finance a way out of. So there goes that benefit of humanity reason for owning the patent. Newsweek recently ran an article titled, "The U.S. is sitting on promising Ebola vaccines." Again, hardly a conspiracy theory website. The article outlines how the government actually has several Ebola vaccines that have shown huge promise, but are still just rotting away on government shelves. Newsweek attributes that to a lack of interest by pharmaceutical companies who don't want to deal with government bureaucracy when the market for an Ebola vaccine has so far proven not to be lucrative. In other words, only poor Africans who can't buy expensive drugs have Ebola. So why would a pharmaceutical company want to invest in that? Renowned conspiracy theory site, The Washington Post, really sums the whole thing up best with their headline, "Ebola-stricken Liberia is descending into economic hell." That's the core of why the U.S. is not working hard to manufacture the Ebola vaccines it already has. Because only poor people are dying from the virus, so they can't make money off a vaccine right now. But because it takes a long time to finish trials, find a manufacturer, and then actually manufacture and distribute a vaccine, the scary part is that, God forbid, if Ebola does start infecting Americans and the rest of the world who can pay for a vaccine, by then it'll be too late. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to know that.
Okay, and that's the resident. The resident. Always enjoy listening to her stuff. Very accurate in how she broke that down with the why there's no action on this vaccine, because it's just not lucrative enough. Now, another spin to the conspiracy side is a lot of people on the conspiracy side believe that Ebola is being allowed to come into the United States via bringing back doctors that are contaminated, or not stopping flights back from West Africa to here, or even not even watching and monitoring the border, because they want Ebola to bring here as a form of depopulation, or as a reasoning, as a logic behind introducing a new vaccine, which will essentially zombify us. If you look at a lot of these shows like 28 Days Later, Contagion, and they say they're basically conditioning the American public to start getting ready for some type of epidemic so that they can vaccinate you with this vaccine that will essentially turn you into a zombie. And that's what's out there. Believe it or not, that information's out there, folks. True or not true, I don't know. I'm not here to tell you the truth behind this stuff. I'm just here to introduce different theories, different logics out there. Not always believe in them. I saw some. First, let's do this. This is the Francesco Abbruzzino Show, or the Uncensored Report, and I am your host, Frankie Abbruzzino. It is a one-man show with the goal of trying to educate, inspire, and affect change out there, and hopefully we're doing that with this information. The goal is to try to, we do cover some stuff that major media might hit on, but to go further into it and to give you different perspectives of it, give you different angles. The Ebola, you've heard me say this if you're a daily watcher, is the fact that I've been on it since the beginning, since March, or whenever it began. I don't even remember, it was so long ago. Major media didn't hit on it until about the 100th death mark. They started mentioning it. 1,000 death mark, they started beating the drums. Then they essentially disappeared. There's still some information out there They don't hit it as much. More information now since we had somebody contracted, Duncan, when he came here, and they were calling him patient zero, but he's really not. There's patient zeros over in West Africa. And then we have the first person that's caught it transmitted. It's been transmitted to. Now her boyfriend, news just broke that I just posted on Educate Inspire, and the fact that her boyfriend now has is showing systematic symptoms of having the Ebola. So it continues on, the issue continues on, and we'll see where it's going to take us. Now, we're going to talk a lot about Ebola today. We're going to talk about Ebola. What do I have on my agenda here? Ebola, call for humanity. I always enjoy this video. I haven't shown it in a few months. I thought I'd put it out there again because it is a call for humanity. And some of the, when you listen to the video, you're going to see there's a lot of stuff a lot of great points that Jamie makes within this video. Baghdad, is it under control? Is the airport really under control, and are we at risk of losing it? The New Deal with the UN, going to try to cover that. NSA surveillance, OPEC unraveling, Obama's truths on the economy, and we're going to try to get to all this stuff if we have the time. So let's go ahead and get started since we do have a full schedule, and we only have 1 hour to cover it all. First, let's talk about Ebola. Have they been lying to us about how easily it spreads? We have this healthcare worker in Dallas. She was wearing full protective gear. Somehow she got the Ebola virus. So does it not spread easily if she's getting it in full protective gear? She says she's followed all the guidelines that were put out by the CDC via their email. Yet the CDC is blaming her, saying she must have screwed up somewhere. They refuse to acknowledge that possibly, there's more issues with this Ebola. A lot of people are out there saying they're acting according to a virus that came out in 1976, and they shouldn't be. They should be responding to how it's mutated, and we're not seeing that from the CDC. Obama declared to the public that you cannot get Ebola. You can't get it from just sitting on a bus. And yet this nurse with protective gear was taking extreme precautions to avoid being exposed and somehow was exposed. The head of the CDC, they say that there must have been some kind of breach in their protocol. Somewhere along the line, she screwed up, not them. Even with everything that's happening, our public officials are still insisting that Ebola is difficult to catch. But I'm not buying it. Go tell that in West Africa and they won't buy it. Could it be possible that they're wrong? More than 200 health workers over in Africa have been treating Ebola, have died with protective gear. Or they've ended up, I shouldn't say they died, they ended up contracting Ebola. More than 100 have died. And if Ebola can be transmitted to workers that easily, what's the chance that the general public is going to have during a full-blown Ebola pandemic when we don't have the protective gear? We don't have the silver. What's going to happen to us, the general public, and what kind of scare, what kind of will that pandemic bring? Will it be a contagion type situation? Will it be a 28 days later type situation? If Ebola can be transmitted to these healthcare workers that easy, what chance is the general public going to have, people? The misinformation that the U.S. government continues to put out is nothing less than staggering. We are led to believe that basically you have to slather yourself in somebody's body fluids to get it, but that's not the truth. And I don't know why the CDC continues to communicate that that's essentially the lengths you'd have to, that you have to get the body fluids all over you before anything would happen. You know, Obama also said that the most common way you can get Ebola is by touching the body fluids of someone who is sick or has died from it, like sweat, saliva, blood. But this healthcare worker didn't do that. The mainstream media is saying the same thing. Why are they misleading? Why aren't they being honest with the public? Yet they'll call someone like me that's out there communicating actual events that occurred a conspiracy theorist. You know, CNN, difficult to catch. All of them are saying that. And I reiterate, if Ebola is that difficult to catch, then why are so many healthcare workers wearing protective gear? Why doesn't the CDC go in there just like me? Common Joe, t-shirt and jeans. Perhaps our public officials and mainstream media should be honest and admit that there's much more to this virus than they simply know. That it's mutated, that it's grown, that it's festered, that there's some changes to it, and that it may spread a lot more easily. And then, what if they're so confident? Ask them to take off their protective gear and head over to West Africa. So when you tell me that you know exactly what Ebola spreads, they're lying to us. And the protective gear they're giving our medical personnel is completely inadequate to prevent it. Yet they're sending them in to treat these Ebola patients. If something is not done quickly, you're going to have people like this nurse in Dallas, the nurse in Spain, who recently contracted the disease. They're going to be having trouble. And to prevent the spread of the disease, these workers need BSL-4 equipment, and they don't have it. It's very expensive. But CDC employees have it. The WND, they did a report recently on the BSL-4 facilities in the country, in the entire country, that there's essentially one. Omaha, Nebraska, I think it is. Now, and that raises a whole new set of questions there, which I'll cover in a second. So what are we going to do with dozens and hundreds of thousands of Ebola patients that start popping up all over the country as this disease spreads as they are expecting it to? HHS, Sylvia Matthews, she's already out there admitting that there may be cases, and I think we have to recognize this as a nation and start to prepare. The truth that this could potentially be facing the greatest health crisis that we've ever seen, and our health officials do not know how to handle it, is concerning. Let us pray. Let us go to church and pray that this crisis fizzles out somehow, because we are rapidly approaching the tipping point. If Ebola starts spreading widely throughout the United States, the authorities are going to be powerless to stop it, as they are almost now. And the key to nip this outbreak in the bud is to change, to break from common practices like what they're doing with this virus here, or this vaccine that the resident talked about. And we need a leader. We need Obama to step up as a leader, and he's refused to do that. He's too worried about going out and golfing. There's been reports of potential cases in Canada, South Africa, the Czech Republic, Austria, Turkey, Brazil. People are concerned. People are freaking out. But none of them are publicly confirmed. But what we do know is that Ebola continues to spread at exponential rates in Africa. It continues to do so. It is inevitable that the travelers will bring it across the globe. So what's to come next? That's what we got to ask ourselves. What is to come next? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Go to my Educate and Inspire page. Let me know, what are your thoughts on it? Could you imagine living in somewhere like Sierra Leone? The plague is closing in all around them there. There's a lot of corruption, suspicions, lack of doctors, and it's all grown into a calamity over there in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Can you imagine having to live there? The death toll in one day came to 121 just the other day. More than 700 people have died from the 2,500 cases. And they believe that that's underreporting. And they believe the underreporting is rampant, that the real number is much higher. But the sick people don't come forward, and locals don't rate the competence of the civil servants as that being that high. They are overly influenced by their democratically elected political masters who want to keep the lid on this. They don't want social unrest. And they want to keep that death toll number down. The government is being roundly criticized for its response, but in reality, their response has not been that lackluster there in Sierra Leone. Their healthcare infrastructure is in shambles, folks. I was watching a video the other day, and an individual was laying in the street. They say it was made up. And I don't know if I'm sold on that. Possibly it could be. But the hospital was there. And it looked like a shack. They said they have no room. A shambles. You know, you don't want to blame the victims, but the situation is abetted by an incredibly misinformed, gullible, and largely illiterate population there in Sierra Leone. And the totally inadequate international response must shoulder some of the blame too, folks. Over there, do you realize you have 10 ambulances serving almost 7 million people? That's it. I think I have 10 here in the city of 20,000. There are 2 doctors for every 100,000 people. With services like that, you're going to have problems. And it's not money that's the problem. The $1 billion sought to deal with this epidemic remains subscribed. Britain and the United States, among others, have pledged vast amounts, but no one is asking for the money. They want skilled medical and support people there to help with this epidemic. There's an increasing sense of that this plague is closing in, and death is looking at people right in the face, and they're really concerned, all the citizens there. CDC's there, the WHO's there, and they're focused on the government's response to sanitization, getting the message out that Ebola is real, that it's not fake, it's not a conspiracy. And that's essentially why there's so much focus on sanitization. You tell them it's Ebola and they'll die, right? Surely that's enough. Many do not believe that, though. They don't believe it's real. They think it's a political plot to wipe out the entire eastern region. Another reason for the sanitization is many people don't trust the government there. And who can blame them? We don't trust them here. Especially there, as corrupt as they are. So there's many concerns over there in Sierra Leone. So where do you go from here? You know, I'm not an expert, but my guess is that with Sierra Leone, it's coming to your way soon unless the vaccines are developed. We need to get some type of vaccines there. And what concerns me, though, is this an effort to push vaccines on us? And what about our 3,000 to 4,000 Marines that are heading over to Liberia? Why not send 300 doctors instead? Why are you putting Marines that are there designed to kill in for this issue, for this case? I don't get it. It's all political. It's all decorations. Now, Russia says they have a vaccine that will work, that'll be ready in 2 months, that has a 70 to 90% efficiency rate. I'm not sure if that's accurate. They say that it's been tested. It's really efficient. It's proven efficient against various hemorrhagic fevers, including Marburg, which is, I guess, very similar to Ebola. The Virology Institute in Russia is preparing whole groups of this drug. So Russia is out there actively thinking of ways to solve this issue. Now, back to those Marines. One of the reasons why, and I think I covered this, many people believe the Marines are going there, is simply to protect our oil interest against China, to position ourselves against China, who's gaining a huge foothold there. Now, meanwhile, Obama's out golfing. He's enjoying the good life. No one yet knows what the United States' second Ebola patient, this nurse over there, how she became infected. We know she's a female, she's a nurse, she's 26. I think her last name's Fang. She was over there working with Duncan. She says she did everything she's supposed to do. She followed every protocol. CDC says, no, you breached protocol. She says, no, I didn't. Many nurses are upset because they're saying 85% of them, we're not getting the training. They'll send out an email and say, this is what you do. We don't have the proper equipment to go in there. With this such an apparent ease of transmission, why are these individuals from affected nations still allowed to enter the United States? And that's the question many of us have. Dozens of countries have already stopped travel from these Ebola-stricken countries, but we have not. Why? Does this logic not dictate that it's a matter of time before it's going to hit our shores? Is this what Obama wants? Is this what our government wants? They're taking measures to detect it. Are these measures even effective tools out there to detect it? I don't know. I'm not buying into it. Our authorities, they say that isolating the Ebola affected nations would frustrate efforts to fight the disease. I don't know if I'm on board with that. They say it would increase the chances of transmission into the United States. How? How is that increasing it more than stopping a flight from coming in? You're saying that if a flight is able to come in here, that we have less risk of getting it versus banning it? This doesn't ring true, folks. The Dell's nurse, she's in quarantine now, fighting for her life. And no one has said it would hinder efforts to treat them. I'm concerned about that, folks. I'm concerned about our healthcare workers. So, and the question you start to ask is, if policies are good enough on our shores, why has Barack Obama not applied it to protect our shores? Why isn't he doing anything out there? How expendable, given that American has already died from the disease. We got this enterovirus 68 that I talked yesterday. Who's the presence in the United States is somehow attributed to Obama's refusal to enforce immigration law, even though many critics are wondering why, because a lot of us associate that D68 that coming with it. You're getting people crossing the border with TB. Why isn't Obama being more proactive out there in solving this issue? Like I said, 85% of the nurses say they're not trained. That there's no policy in place to prevent or to take action and help these Ebola-ridden patients. Many of them are going on strike. Can you blame them? I'd be real hesitant if I was a nurse at getting out there and doing anything. And I've mentioned this before. My mom was at Sarasota. I think she's getting released today. She was there when they said, the news came out and said, hey, there's a possible Ebola patient here at Sarasota Hospital. She was there. She didn't hear about it. The nurses that worked there didn't know about it, yet the hospital was saying they were on high alert. How are you on high alert if your staff doesn't know about it? The nurse found out through my mom from watching TV. I had fans on my Scoop pages, my local media pages, and they didn't know, except for what I posted on the Scoop. So how is that on high alert? How is that effectively handling Ebola if it does come here? Now, the person ended up not having it. The concern was he came over from Africa. He had a lot of the symptoms of Ebola. That was the concern. All right, folks, we're going to be back, and we'll talk a little bit more about different news issues that are going on within our nation and internationally.
Successfully profited.
This year I'm up 60% on my portfolio. Following your system has been fantastic. I've been with you for about a month and a half now, and I'm already up 7%.
I've been in the business for a long time, and you're really one of the best I've ever heard.
Well, I just want to let you know what a great teacher you are.
For over a decade, PhilsGang.com's Phil Grandy and Donald Cogswell have been teaching, coaching, and investing right along with all Phil's Gang members.
I want to thank Donnie for market rep. I bought 2,500 shares of AUI and sold it this morning at $820 profit.
Why not join thousands of satisfied Phil's Gang customers today? Go to PhilsGang.com, PhilsGang.com, or call 877-600-4264. That's 877-600-4264. Call today.
Okay, now we're going to actually, instead of talking, we're going to take a look at Jamie's video. It's a video I really enjoy watching. I watch it all the time, and it's about humanity. Take a listen to it, and perhaps we'll talk a little bit about it afterwards. And let's go ahead and get it queued up.
So here I am, standing alone in the open. I'm here with a message, hoping to repair what's broken. Nature is struggling, humanity's not on track. We've got our heads in the sand and our pride intact. We seek fulfillment through wealth, but do we achieve it? We want prosperity through consumerism, but is it worth it? Have we actually found freedom, or have we lost it? Because all we do is follow a system and never really challenge it. Can you relate to that? Or is the world too blind to see? I'd always seek the truth, but care what my peers thought of me. I saw a different perspective and struggled by the hour. You see, I knew ignorance was bliss, but knowledge could give me power. So now I call for humanity, not just for one nation. I'm opposing separation and standing up to segregation. Whether religious or atheist, in essence we're the same. Stereotypes are man-made, and it was man who created the game. But are we actually ready to accept this and wake up? Can we put our naivety on the line, or are we always going to collide? Are we ready to make a difference? Do we venture into the unknown, or do we stay in our comfort zones and keep on taking the easy ride? Because at sea, it's ships that are safest at shore. But no, that's not what ships were made for. So ask yourself this, why are you really here? You may find that deep, but my question really is sincere. For my generation, are we misled as a youth? Do we rub off our true purpose due to false misleading truth? Are we prone to propaganda? Are we prone to wrong information? Are we taught to judge each other based on religion, sex, race, culture, class, nation? The list goes on. The moral of this poem may be hard to grasp. I know it's not something usually heard, and it's not your average task. But the point is to stop damaging what we cannot recreate. We shouldn't prioritize selfish desires and let them decide our fate. However, let me tell you, in no way am I perfect, and in no way am I better than you. I mean, yeah, I wrote this message myself, but it applies to myself too. So it's time to start improving, and it's time to start speaking, because resources are lowering and poverty is increasing. We allow cities to get larger, buildings to get taller, but trees to get shorter and forests to get smaller. We're an ingenious species. We could easily change everything, but we're made to think different due to decades of conditioning. We conform to education to confirm our own security, yet it's a biased institution that makes wisdom hold obscurity. Is it actually correct? And does it actually judge intelligence? Or is it just listening to our elders and improving our obedience? Are possessions an illusion of worth? Are we tricked in our thinking? Are we trying to buy wholeness, and are we trying to buy meaning? Do they always give joy? Do they distract us from reality? Do they determine our identity, and do they alter our morality? I mean, what are our goals? This really isn't a joke. Can happiness be superficial and our routine a hoax? Do we live for the wrong things whilst the right things choke? Is mainstream TV legit, or can it dictate our attractions? Does it actually bring us together, or does it separate us into factions? We categorize each other via a social hierarchy, but status is made by humans, so who really are we? Is ego destroying eco? Are the real problems disguised? Do we really know the truth, or does our society feed us lies? Are we actually filling our voids, and does money hold any true weight? Could we drop our precious comforts to renew our planet's state? It really is time to stop living our lives in shells, because doing nothing for others is the undoing of ourselves. We're all from the same source, so let's see it for what it's worth. We only have one home, and that home is planet Earth. So are our laws actually just, or can power avoid the prison? Are our governments really innocent, or are they flawed in their decisions? Do they actually care for all life, or only for their own health? Do their motives come from morals, or do they just want power and wealth? They try to justify a war on terror, but it's lasted for over a decade. It's caused 1 million deaths, so don't you think they've overstayed? Is patriotism necessary? Can't we see it's prejudicial? Have we forgotten our common grounds, and have we forgotten what's artificial? I mean, am I truthfully British? Am I really European? Am I actually a Western person, or am I just a human being? See, the media highlight the smallest of tragedies in first world countries, but fail to cover that over 90 million worldwide have died from hunger in 12 years. So where do our priorities lie? Britain, China, Russia, America, France, Syria, Iran, Israel, Jordan, Iraq. Whether Western or Middle East, everyone deserves peace. No more national wars, no more bodies deceased. Let's come together as one and keep humanity in one piece. So are we going to be responsible? Are we going to take a stand? Are we going to change our ways and play our cards on the other hand? I'm not saying I have all the answers, and I'm not forcing any suggestions. I'm just saying it's about time we see things differently, and it's about time we ask some questions. So what will you do? How much will you allow? This is my call for humanity to create a change, and the time to start is now.
So what do you think about that, Jamie? He's a strong message. Hopefully you watched it and you listened to it, and hopefully it will inspire you to get out and make some type of change for the better. We'll be right back after this message. 1-800-PET-MEDS. Yes, get your pet essentials, your medicines, your collars, everything you need online. And guess what? You'll be supporting the operations of this great station, the Uncensored Report. So go to my website, click on the icon for 1-800-PET-MEDS, and help us continue the information war that's going on out there. Get some of this great apparel from theroguegrant.com or the Uncensored Report or thevintagescoop.com. We have hats, shirts, coffee mugs. They say educate, inspire, and change. Or for my Scoop fans, it'll say the Vintage Scoop, Sarasota Scoop, etc. Help me with this operation so I can continue to get a fresh perspective on the news out to the masses. Thanks a lot, and have a great day. Just go to my website and click on the icon. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit about OPEC. I don't know if you've noticed, but oil prices have taken a huge drop lately over the last couple of weeks. A lot of people were using 90 as the point of concern, and now I think we're down to like 82. I didn't even check the oil prices today, but I know they continue to drop. And the question now is OPEC, are they unraveling? Is there an issue out there? With oil production from Bacon Formation to in North Dakota to all across the world, but in North Dakota, it's now exceeding 1 million barrels a day. And the Eagle Ford and Permian Basin oil fields in Texas are producing more than 3 million barrels per day. So that's contributing, that and Saudi Arabia increasing their output, are contributing to the worldwide and drop in the prices. Like I said, it's been dropping, 52-week lows. I think just yesterday it was 82 something. I can't even remember where it closed at. And that's not the only one that's dropping. Lundenberg just reported an average price of gasoline across the country have dropped 3.26 per gallon. So this is a good thing for the consumers, right? Also to help the food prices, because a lot of food prices, inflation and everything is tied to the gasoline prices. So hopefully we should see a drop in those. Doubtful, but hopeful. And in response to the falling prices, Saudi Arabia, they're the largest OPEC producer. They earlier this summer, like I said, they cut barrels down 400,000 barrels per day. And that did nothing to stem the decline in the prices. And they're recognizing the reality that a unilateral cut in prices to its best customers will leave the cartels in disarray. Saudi Arabia has then solicited long-term cut price contracts with a number of their best customers, which is upsetting the apple cart. And they're doing that only to protect their own market share. This was met by a decision by the Iraq State Oil Market Company on Sunday to cut their price of their Basra light crude. Another player into the whole thing is with Iraq is huge for oil. ISIS controls a large portion of their oil now, and they're out there selling it on the black markets. Even though many countries shouldn't be buying it, Turkey is a huge buyer of their oil because it's so cheap. A measure of discomfiture among members of the cartel is the recent behavior of Saudi Arabia's longtime oil minister Al-Anami, who for years provided the soothing ointment needed to keep the cartel together. At their regular semi-annual meeting, Nami would arrive, he'd get there early, he'd schmooze with the members and lay the groundwork for the agreement for production quotas and price targets. But at this last meeting, he showed up late, attended one session, and essentially took off. So is OPEC unraveling? It was just 6 years ago in the summer that Saudi Arabia found itself in a similar position. And that was the Great Recession, where the economies around the globe were contracting and prices for crude had dropped about 30%. The cartel, OPEC, the cartel, officially announced a cut in production to keep prices from falling below 100 a barrel. So what are they going to do now that it's in the 80s? Once again, Saudi Arabia appears to be going their own way against the wishes of the cartel. Is this signal the death knell for the cartel? Who knows? A lot of people are too worried that Saudi Arabia may turn towards the BRIC countries and dump the petrodollar. Another huge issue out there that I think I've covered before. Now, and along the lines of Iraq, since we're over there in the Middle East, and I did mention Iraq briefly, and we have ISIS, and I stated that ISIS controls large swaths of Iraq. Now they're knocking on the door of Baghdad. And the question is, should we be concerned about this? Is Baghdad airport safe from ISIS? Never mind what the America's top general said. ISIS was never so close to overrunning the strategic location, according to Iraq. They're saying it's not going to happen. Yet the U.S. top general, American general, is in there saying he has concerns about it. But Iraqi security officials continue to shoot down these top claims by these top military officers that ISIS has nearly seized the airport. They're saying it's strategically under control. General Dempsey said the American Apache attack helicopters were all that stood between this militant group and the airport. But once again, Baghdad came in and said, no, that's not the way it's happening. Sitting on the western edge of the capital, this airport is pretty strategic. It's a key lifeline to U.S. troops. You have American embassy staff that need to use it to get out of there. And, of course, it's a key part to the whole Iraq economy. Since the 2003 invasion, we've housed military assets there. We've transported supplies in and out of Iraq through this airport. Our U.S. occupation headquarters was situated in that airport. And for years, this was a route between it and Baghdad proper were among the most hotly contested of all of Iraq. So strategically speaking, it's huge. But the Iraq security and military officials claim reports of insecurity at Abu Ghraib and around this airport are all overblown, that it's incendiary, that nothing's happening, they have it under control, and that the airport is immune from all sides. Everything is under control. Do we believe them? While officials in Baghdad are trying to project this calm, just as the west of the capital, Anbar's leadership is sounding the alarm. They're saying, hey, look, the militants now control 80% of the Anbar province. They're saying that we're outgunned, we're beleaguered, our Iraqi troops, army are starting to collapse. They're tired from all the fighting. When Apache helicopters were deployed to Iraq in July, the Pentagon officials said that the aircraft would be used to provide security for U.S. facilities and people and property, not out there protecting the airport. Use of the helicopters early this month to protect Baghdad's airport suggests the U.S. is increasingly concerned about the situation there, the security situation there. And following this dramatic sweep across northern Iraq by ISIS, the group has steadily been making progress. And they're making it across the western Anbar province, and most recently, the capital, Ramadi. And from a strategic perspective, ISIS sees Ramadi as a gateway to pose further threat to Baghdad. Capturing Ramadi for ISIS will put the entire highway under their control, allowing the group to ferry supplies eastward and eventually push into Baghdad. So that it's a strategic position. Yep, Iraq says, oh, no, don't worry about it. We got it all under control. Do we believe them? What say you? We'll be right back. Check out My Patriot Supply. They got the straw there. That straw is great. I tell you what, folks, you can go out and basically, if we're in a critical situation and there's a massive hurricane, there's no water, guess what? You use these straws, the life straw, out there in the pond, and it cleans out all the water and gets you filtered water. How can you beat it? Check it out. Check the product and much more, and help support the operations at theuncensoredreport.com. Did you know that the Bead Room, Macy's, and Sam's Club are now part of my organization where we are doing a revenue sharing program? So go to my webpage, theuncensoredreport.com. Click on any of those three links and take advantage of some of the free shipping or discounts that you may get. In return, you're supporting the operation and allowing me to continue to get the message out, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Thanks for supporting the program. Okay, now I wanted to touch on a few financial issues, a few financial concerns. One being the dollar with this Russia-China currency agreement swap, which they agreed to a while ago. It finally went through. The Federal Reserve and the low interest rate and how it's really impacting the economy. And what Obama did not say about the economy that is a concern. First, just talking and touching briefly on the dollar Russia-China this agreement they have over transfer of oil. And basically the Central Bank of China and Russia signed this 3-year ruble to yen currency swap. And it's up to $25 billion. That's right, with a B. And what it does is designed to boost trade and use national currencies and less dependency on the dollar and euro. This has come about due to the sanctions that we've been dropping on Russia. And from China's perspective, and Russia's too, they're trying to take away the power and control that America has as a reserve currency. Now, the central bank over in China announced this $150 billion yen currency swap between Russia and the ruble over oil. And this is where a lot of people are starting to get concerned because Russia and China are two big countries in the BRIC countries. And they're skirting around the petrodollar issue. The deal's valid for 3 years, and it can be extended if it works out. And what they're saying is that by using these local currencies, they will speed up the trade between the two countries that are aiming to reach $100 billion by next year, folks. That's a lot of money. Cooperation between these two banks in both countries is also on the rise. China's Import-Export Bank, which is 100% state-owned, has pledged to help Russian banks now cut off from the Western capital. They're going to create their own credit cards. They're going to do all that good stuff. And the whole point of this is, folks, that the more and more less reliant these countries are on our dollar, on the reserve currency, the more stronger this BRIC becomes, the more affluent it becomes, the bigger issue concern it is for our economy. And that's why we need to be a bit concerned out there. Now, a lot of people are pulling away from the economy just because of the Fed's actions, because of their low interest. It's basically zero interest rate policy. They're turning and burning of printing money, QE. But to cope with the financial crisis, Obama's been out there. He's pulling out all stops, record deficits, banks, automaker bailouts. We remember those, right? And Bush, don't get me wrong, Bush was involved in that too. Sweeping financial reform. But since the summer of 2009, our GDP has advanced only 2.2% annually. 1 out of 6 men ages 25 or 25 to 54 remain jobless, folks. Wages are stagnant. Family incomes are falling. Those are two numbers that he tends to miss out on. He'll give that unemployment rate, which is 5.5% or whatever it is, but that does not look at all the people that have stopped looking for jobs, which I covered the other day. That does not look at the fact that wages are stagnant, that income is down. People might have jobs, but at a lot far less of an income. America once boasted the most productive manufacturing R&D on the planet, but not anymore, folks. Those CEOs are moving to China, to foreign locations, cheaper corporate taxes, cheaper labor. Nowadays, many people can't start a decent career, or they are burdened with too much college debt. They have to go out and get the best job or easiest job they can. They're postponing marriages and kids. They're living with their parents. Elderly, instead of retiring, they're out there bagging groceries. Now, some of them are bagging groceries, busting tables because they want to. I mean, when I retire, I don't want to just sit around the house and wait for death to come knocking on my door. To me, I want to stay active. I want to get out there. I want to be able to bag groceries. So it's not all that. University presidents have been reinvesting in football, covering up the criminal activities of athletes and coaches, and short funding science and engineering. They push students into cheap-to-staff majors in social sciences and humanities, which has a bottom-line impact on the jobs out there and the wages, on the U.S. productivity growth, which has slowed to a historical anemic 1% a year, while China's is at about 5 to 6%. And if we continue this way, the Federal Reserve's revenues, the federal revenues, will soon be inadequate, folks. And support from democratic institutions will fray and then disassemble, and America will become a darker, unrecognizable place. That's the concern out there. And the culprits are all around us. Like I said, that corporate tax rate at 35% is just too high. It's pushing a lot of these people out of here. Government regulations, I've covered that a few weeks ago. And the burden it's causing, the economic burden it's causing many companies. Unless a business can find a politician to put a fix on this, we're going to continue to have these issues. The Treasury recently ruled that transmission wires are now real estate for tax purposes, permitting telecom companies much lower rates under the tax code. The dollar is terribly overvalued against the Chinese yuan. And that's thanks to Beijing's capital controls and currency market intervention. This makes Chinese products artificially cheap at the local Walmart store and sends American factory jobs overseas. Now, Obama admits this is a problem, but confronting Beijing would just upset the New York bankers, who are also big contributors to the Democratic machine. So instead, he spends his political energy trying to close Gitmo, to bring tourist inmates onto U.S. soil, to do prison swaps for Bogdell. And since the financial crisis began, the Fed has pumped trillions of dollars into financial markets to keep the interest rates low and propagated the myth that healthy dose of inflation could get the economy growing quickly. But it has produced little evidence of inflation could fix this dysfunctional, besetting American capitalism. You got low interest rates out there that have pushed up auto and home sales, and and stock prices too. So we're looking at another bubble, and many people are worried about that out there. But anyone with a nose can smell the stench of decay that this is bringing about, folks. Only by ending at easy money policies could the Fed stop enabling Washington's irresponsible behavior and help force political change. If the Fed doesn't act soon, it may simply just be too late for our economy. And I'm afraid we may have already reached that point. And that's why you got to sit back and wonder, what Obama didn't say about the economy and what he did say. In his speech the other day before the federal government, he reported U.S. job growth of about 248,000 in September. Obama painted this pretty picture in what made the current state of the American economy look like a grand fireworks finale on the 4th of July. Everything's beautiful, dazzling. Unemployment jobs are down. Manufacturing growing. Deficit cut by more than half. High school graduations are up. College enrollment up. Energy production up. Obamonomics. Everything that should be up is up. Everything that should be down is down. But is that what's really happening? Well, not exactly, is it? Not exactly every economic measure. Some things went up during President Obama's White House years that weren't included on the checklist. A key indicator of economic hardship, the enrollment in food stamps, is higher in every state than it was 5 years ago. And food stamps use shows continued underemployment pain. But for some reason, he ignored that one. The official unemployment rate underestimates the economic pain our economy is having, since it doesn't include the people who stopped working for jobs, that decided to barely get by with a part-time or low-paying job. That official rate include as an unemployed those who are jobless but have stopped looking for employment. That I think it was close to 1 million people. And those who are working part-time but are seeking full-time work. If you add all that in, the unemployment rate goes from 6.3 or whatever it is at now, up to 12.6. The average number of food stamps beneficiaries per month increased from 33.5 million in 2009 to 46.5 in 2014. So what also is missing from his economic success speech is the labor sector's participation rate. In September, the number of people in the U.S. labor force dropped by 97,000, which lowered the rate. Okay? It lowered the rate. The share of the non-institutionalized population, 16 years and older, working or seeking work. And it lowered it to 62.7. And that's the lowest rate since 78. It's a 36-year low. List of economic advances was any mention at the level of direction or household. So is the economy really that much better off? That's the question you got to ask yourself, folks. Or is he fudging the numbers? We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, this is Frankie, and I'm here today to introduce Longevity. It's a great nutritional supplement to anybody that's eating right or not eating right. I take supplements on a regular basis, and Longevity cannot be beat, especially at some of the great price points. So go to theroguerant.com or theuncensoredreport.com and click on shop. Go down to Longevity, click on it, and you'll be helping out the operations of the station so that we can continue to bring you a fresh perspective on alternative news. Longevity, check it out today. All right, folks, we're back. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the UN push for a global New Deal, because this is concerning to me. This is something you're not really seeing at all on major media. You're not really seeing it out there at all anywhere. And there's a new report out there. It's called the Global Governance and Policy Space for Development. The dictator-dominated United Nations has blasted free markets and said it's time for what the outfit described as an international New Deal. You know, when I think New Deal, I think FDR, the New Deal that brought in so many entitlement programs. This is a little different. It includes a tax on tax competition, along with calls for more wealth extraction from citizens to fund bigger government, abolishing financial privacy worldwide to facilitate a global taxation, and much more. With this, this is ridiculous. These latest comments by the UN are obnoxious, inaccurate, and ideological. The latest UN report makes the theme clear. Global centralized big government under any pretext is the goal. The 50th anniversary falls at a time when there's a call for changes in the way the global economy is ordered and managed. And you see that stuff with like the TTP that I covered yesterday. This controversial UN bureaucracy, perhaps the most infamous for its decades-old push to build what it calls a new international economic order. And it goes to blast the so-called market liberalism, more commonly known as the United States free markets, folks. When the UN speaks of the international community, what it really means is that the UN and its collections of member governments, often ruthless dictators like in Iran and North Korea, genocidal murderers. You got people like Cuba's Castro, Zimbabwe's Mugabe, Sudan's Bashir, Kim Jong-un, and many other like-minded despots and psychopaths who barbarically oppress and impoverish their own rule. Yet they're on this committee. They're part of this group. And this whole reference to this New Deal in and itself should also spark alarms. The progressive plot orchestrated by U.S. President Roosevelt back in the 30s. It involved unprecedented explosion of federal government and its powers far beyond any semblance of the Constitution. The entitlement era began. Much of the scheming was launched using executive orders, not unlike Obama. Despite the fact that the U.S. Constitution grants no legislative powers to the president to do this. The New Deal expended the federal power far outside the constitutional bounds, seizing huge swaths of the economy, while empowering armies of lawless bureaucrats to control the rest, folks. Now imagine such a plot at a global level. It would necessarily require independent revenue streams, i.e. taxes, for the UN mass wealth redistribution, the enforcement operations, their kangaroo courts, and much more. But yet you don't hear much about this at all. You don't hear much about this on major media. Countless studies and mounds of empirical evidence show clearly the best way to create prosperity for all, as UN put it, is to allow free people and free markets to produce and trade freely. History has shown that the government development agencies, wealth redistribution, and costly bureaucracies determined to restrict liberty actually produce the opposite of prosperity for all. And a good, for instance, is North Korea, Zimbabwe, Cuba. They all ruled by regimes that are UN members. I should say UNCTAD. The acronym's too long. And that plenty of government planning, a robust public sector, massive government revenues relative to the size of their economy, and virtually every other characteristic touted in the UN report as a recipe for success and prosperity. Yet the suffering of these people in these nations is among the poorest on the planet, not to mention the gulags and the tyranny that they put upon their people. The nations that enjoy the greatest levels of economic freedom, such as Hong Kong, Canada, Switzerland, United States, Singapore, have the highest standard of living out of anywhere. Even those who pass for poor in economically free nations are far richer than the average person in the other locations, the Cubas of the world. Multilateral leadership and collective action mean just that what you think they do. Big government schemes to run the UN. Just think now, we're big government now with Obama. How well off are you? How well are you doing? Imagine that at a global level. Imagine it. The New Deal. The global New Deal. Are you buying into it? What the world needs is to create prosperity for all is not a new deal from the UN. It doesn't need big government. It doesn't need global regulation, wealth redistribution, further attacks on our liberty. In fact, if prosperity was truly the goal, the discredited UN agency would be prescribed the exact opposite: free markets, small governments, as well as regulatory and tax competition between their jurisdictions to stimulate good governance. If Americans hope to remain prosperous and free, ditching what remains of the domestic New Deal along with the UN and virtually all its false globalists, that would create a recipe for success. So we need to get, the UN was a temporary charter. How it's still around with the control they have today is beyond me. People like Obama use the UN as a reasoning to go into countries like Libya. I get to bypass Congress because we're part of this UN deal. I've had enough. I, for one, have had enough of it. All right, folks, that's our show for today, I do believe. Wait, hold on one second. I did not know if I put this one video in here. And it does not look like I did. Okay, so that's going to be our show for today, folks. If you're here in Sarasota County, it looks like rain all day today and tomorrow with the approaching cold front. This is a national program, so hopefully it's great wherever you guys are. I know north of Georgia, I think it's getting pretty chilly up there. So enjoy this cool weather. I will be back tomorrow at 11 with the goal of educating, inspiring, and trying to affect change for the betterment of our society. If you remember to go to the Uncensored Report, catch the latest news, check out my store there. You can get to Phil's Gang. Check out philsgang.com and listen to his show. He's live at 9 and again at 3 each day, Monday through Friday. I have my show on philsgang.com and on my the scoopradioshow.com every Saturday at 12 where I discuss local issues but put a national perspective into it. So check those out. For Frankie, this has been the Uncensored Report.